Christmas morning. My brother Jake is holding a Tesla key, the red bow outside still shining under the Texas sun. My parents clap like it's the second coming. And me? I'm sitting on the carpet, staring at a glass jar filled with $3.75 in loose change. My future home fund, they called it. 34 years of being the responsible one, and this is what I'm worth. I smiled, but inside, something cracked. That was the exact moment I realized, I wasn't staying in this family's story any longer. I was about to write my own. If you've ever felt dismissed, betrayed, or made to feel invisible, or maybe you've experienced the deepest loneliness, or that unbearable pain of losing those you love most, share it. Leave a comment, tell me where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe, because maybe the next story will remind you of your own strength. Christmas morning in Dallas should have smelled like cinnamon rolls and second chances. Instead, it smelled like betrayal disguised as pine-scented air freshener. My brother Jake dangled a brand new Tesla key in his hand, the metal catching the fairy lights from the tree like a spotlight on a stage. My parents erupted into applause, Dad clapping so hard his gold watch slid down his wrist, Mom gasping with both hands pressed to her chest as though she'd just witnessed a miracle. And me? I sat cross-legged on the rug, the same rug I used to nap on as a little girl, holding a glass jar filled with $3.75 in loose change. Pennies, nickels, a few quarters. The future home fund, Dad called it, winking at me as though it were some inside joke I should appreciate. My chest tightened as he added, "You're always so responsible with money, Emily. Not like some people." He glanced at Jake, and Jake laughed as if the line was scripted just for him. The room tilted. For a moment, I thought maybe I'd misheard, that perhaps there was another gift waiting behind the couch. But no. This was it. $3.75, after 34 years of carrying this family's burdens without complaint. I looked at Jake, bouncing on his toes like he was 16 again instead of 31. He tossed the Tesla key in the air and caught it with the flair of someone who'd never paid for anything with his own sweat. "Don't worry, sis," he grinned, plopping down beside me. His cologne hit me sharp, expensive, suffocating. "I'll give you rides whenever your little Ford breaks down." My Ford. The one I'd bought with cash, rebuilt with scraped knuckles and late-night YouTube tutorials, and driven across mountain passes without a single complaint. My Ford had earned its place. Unlike him. Unlike me, apparently. Mom leaned forward, her pearls glinting under the lights. "Jake needs reliable transportation for his new design clients. Image is everything in that business, you know." And there it was. The justification. The script. Jake needed. Jake deserved. Jake got. Meanwhile, I sat with that jar, my throat closing, my hands numb against the cold glass. I'd brought them gifts, Dad's leather briefcase, Mom's silver bracelet, Jake's new laptop, all bought with late nights, skipped meals, and paychecks stretched thinner than paper. And still, I was invisible. I smiled through the ache in my chest, because that's what I'd always done. But inside, something cracked open so wide it scared me. For the first time in my life, I wondered, what if I stopped smiling? What if I stopped staying? As Jake jingled his new keys and my parents poured champagne before noon, I heard my own heartbeat louder than their laughter. And in that beat, in that hollow silence only I could hear, one truth settled deep inside me. I wasn't staying in this family's story any longer. I was about to write my own. I wish I could say that Christmas morning was the first time I felt invisible. But the truth? It was just another page in a story I'd been forced to read my entire life. The memories came rushing back faster than I could stop them. I was 6 when Jake turned 3. His birthday was a carnival in our backyard, an inflatable bounce house swaying under the Texas sun, a magician pulling doves out of his sleeves, and 30 kids running wild with faces painted like superheroes. Mom wore her wide-brimmed straw hat and snapped photos like she was documenting a celebrity event. Dad hired a photographer too, just in case her Polaroids weren't enough. And the next year, when it was my turn, I blew out candles on a sheet cake from Costco with 2 friends from kindergarten, the frosting already smeared from the plastic lid. No magician. No balloons. Just a half-empty living room and Dad muttering, "Emily doesn't need all that fuss. She's independent." Independent. That word became their shield, their excuse. At 10, when Jake got a PlayStation, I got a set of library cards. "You love reading," Mom said brightly, as if that balanced the scales. At 14, when Jake flunked algebra, Dad hired him a private tutor. When I aced calculus, they said, "We knew you'd be fine." Fine. I grew to hate that word. High school graduation was supposed to be different. I stood at the podium as valedictorian, my hands trembling as I gripped the speech I'd practiced for weeks. I looked out into the bleachers, searching for their faces. But the seats were empty. Dad had taken Jake to an away soccer game. "It's important he feels supported," Mom explained later, pressing the VHS recorder into my hands. "We'll watch it tonight." They never did. The tape sat untouched on my dresser until I packed for college. That pattern followed me everywhere. Jake's needs were immediate, urgent, worthy of sacrifice. Mine could wait. I was independent. I would be fine. As I sat there on that Christmas rug, clutching the glass jar of loose change, those years collapsed into a single point of clarity. This wasn't a one-time slight. It was a system. A well-oiled machine of favoritism that ran on my silence. I remembered whispering to myself during long nights in college, working double shifts at the campus bookstore just to cover rent, "One day, they'll see me. One day, they'll be proud." But staring at Jake's Tesla key glinting under the tree lights, I finally understood, recognition was never coming. And once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. People talk about sacrifice like it's noble. Like it's supposed to make you stronger, holier, somehow above the rest. But no one talks about what it feels like when your sacrifices vanish into thin air, swallowed whole by people who don't even notice. That Christmas, I had walked into my parents' house carrying carefully wrapped gifts that had cost me months of planning. A leather briefcase for Dad, the kind he'd once admired in a storefront window but dismissed as too extravagant. A delicate silver bracelet for Mom, the exact one she had stopped to touch in a boutique during a trip to Houston, her eyes lingering long enough for me to remember. And for Jake, a brand new laptop he'd mentioned in passing, his old one, too slow, for the graphics programs he claimed he needed. I'd budgeted for months, setting aside a little from every paycheck. Late nights at the office, extra consulting work on the weekends, dinners skipped to stretch my grocery money. All of it funneled into these 3 boxes, wrapped in gold and silver paper, ribbons tied just right. When Dad opened the briefcase, he barely looked up. "Nice," he muttered, already scanning the football game on the TV. Mom slipped the bracelet onto her wrist, admired it in the light for a moment, then turned to pour more champagne. Jake tore into his laptop box like a kid, then shrugged. "Cool. Thanks, Em." His eyes were already fixed on the Tesla gleaming outside. That was it. No excitement. No gratitude. Not even eye contact. My gifts disappeared into the background like I did. Meanwhile, Jake's Tesla key became the star of the show. Dad slapped him on the back. Mom teared up, whispering about how proud she was. Jake strutted through the living room like he had earned every ounce of that moment. I sat there with the empty space where my gifts had been, my hands pressed together to stop the trembling. Inside, I rehearsed the announcement I had planned, my promotion to lead structural engineer. I had practiced it in the mirror, imagining their faces lighting up, imagining for once I might be the one they toasted with champagne. But when I opened my mouth, Jake jingled his new keys and cut through the room's air with a single sentence: "I can't wait to take this baby for a spin." And just like that, my moment vanished before it even began. I swallowed the words I had carried for months. They tasted bitter, like ashes on my tongue. Sacrifice, I realized, isn't noble when no one sees it. It's just another way to disappear. And that night, staring at Jake's Tesla under the porch light, I made myself a quiet promise: the next sacrifice I made would not be for them. It would be for me. The house was silent by the time I slipped into my childhood bedroom. Jake's laughter still echoed faintly from downstairs, weaving through the floorboards like smoke that wouldn't clear. My parents hovered around him, planning his first road trip in the Tesla, their voices carrying like a hymn of worship. I sat on the edge of my twin bed, staring at the stuffed bear my grandmother had given me decades ago, the only constant in a house that had never felt like home. My fingers pressed into the faded fur until my nails dug crescent moons into my palms. The ache in my chest wasn't just pain anymore, it was cement hardening around my lungs. I whispered the words I hadn't dared say aloud until that night: "I can't do this anymore." The clock blinked 3:15 a.m. in angry red digits. I stood, the decision crashing over me like a tidal wave. No dramatic speech, no second guessing. Just clarity so sharp it felt like a blade. I pulled my old suitcase from the closet, the zippers rasped startling in the silence. I packed quickly, not clothes or keepsakes, but the things that mattered: my grandmother's bear, a photo album from college, the blueprint of the first building I ever designed. The gifts I had given my parents earlier sat untouched downstairs, and I left them where they belonged, among people who would never value them. On my way out, I paused in the kitchen. The coffee maker sat ready for morning, the filter filled, water measured. My mother's ritual. My father's comfort. My hand trembled as I placed my house key on the counter beside it, metal clinking against the laminate like the final note of a song I'd been forced to sing too long. "I'm done being invisible." I whispered it to the empty room, the words a vow only the coffee maker would ever hear. The December air bit hard as I wheeled my suitcase across the driveway. Snowflakes clung to my coat, sharp and wet against my cheeks. The Tesla sat gleaming under the porch light, its red bow now drooping in the cold, like a crown already losing its shine. I tightened my grip on the handle of my battered Ford Focus. When the engine roared to life, it sounded like defiance. The steering wheel vibrated beneath my hands, steadying me as tears blurred the glowing numbers on the dashboard. 317, 318. I pulled out of the driveway, headlights slicing through the dark street I'd known since childhood. Every turn of the tires was a declaration. Every mile between me and that house was proof: the story they had written for me was over. I wasn't running away. I was finally walking toward myself. The interstate stretched ahead of me, a black ribbon cutting through the frozen Texas night. My Ford Focus rattled against the wind, its wipers squealing in protest as fat snowflakes hurled themselves against the windshield. Each one felt like a reminder of how unprepared I was, for the weather, for the road, for the life I was suddenly steering toward. But turning back was not an option. The dashboard clock glowed 3:42 a.m., the digits flickering in and out as if the car itself questioned my resolve. I gripped the wheel tighter, knuckles white, shoulders hunched, breath fogging in the icy cabin. The heater wheezed, fighting to keep pace with the storm's breath that clawed through the seams of the doors. My mind raced faster than the tires could grip the slick pavement. Each mile marker became a ghost from my past, whispering accusations. 5th birthday, Jake's pony rides and princess cake. 6th, your sheet cake with 2 friends and a stack of napkins from the dollar store. Valedictorian speech, an empty row of seats. College years, double shifts and ramen, while Jake posted photos from Paris. The storm outside blended with the storm inside, memories colliding with the thrum of the engine. My chest tightened until I swore I could hear the echo of my father's voice. you'll be fine. You're independent. The words had once felt like encouragement. Tonight, they sounded like chains. A semi roared past me, its tires spraying a wave of slush across my windshield. For 3 terrifying seconds, I was blind. Just me, the storm, and the sickening silence of not knowing if the road was still beneath my tires. My pulse hammered against my throat. When the wipers finally cleared a narrow view, my breath escaped in a ragged sob I hadn't known I was holding. I turned off the radio when Bing Crosby crooned about white Christmases. The irony cut too deep. The silence that followed was heavier than the snow on the hood, but at least it was mine. In that cocoon of darkness, I found myself whispering to the empty passenger seat, as if speaking would tether me to something solid. I'm not running away. I'm not. My voice cracked on the second word, but I forced it out again. I'm finally running towards something, even if I don't know what yet. The Focus shuddered as wind pushed against its frame, but it kept moving forward, mile after mile. And so did I. Through the white blur of the storm, I thought I saw a faint glow ahead, the distant lights of a city still asleep. For the first time since leaving, my shoulders loosened just enough for me to breathe. The storm wasn't over. But neither was I. The snow eased into a steady curtain, softer now but no less relentless. My Ford groaned as it climbed a shallow hill, tires gripping for dear life. The dashboard clock blinked 4:27 a.m. My body ached from the tension of holding the steering wheel so tightly, as if my grip alone kept me from sliding off the earth. That's when my phone buzzed against the console. For a split second, fear surged through me. I knew what it would be: Mom, Dad, maybe Jake, voicemails dripping with guilt and excuses. I didn't dare look. But the screen lit up anyway, casting a glow across the dark cabin. Rachel. Her name cracked through me like sunlight piercing storm clouds. My thumb trembled as I tapped the green icon, activating Bluetooth. Her voice filled the car, warm, steady, achingly familiar. Em? Where are you? The sob hit me before I could stop it. A single choked sound, raw enough that it startled me. Somewhere on I-35. South of Dallas. I don't know. It's snowing. My voice broke, unraveling into silence. Rachel didn't flinch. She never did. You're not alone. Do you hear me? You've never been alone, even when they made you feel like it. Come to Denver. Stay with me. The storm howled around the car, but inside, her words wrapped around me like a blanket. My knuckles loosened, my shoulders slumped against the seat. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to. I can't just show up on your doorstep, I whispered. It's Christmas. You have your own life. Family doesn't treat you like trash, Rachel said, her tone sharpening with that firm kindness I had always envied in her. Family shows up. And right now, you need someone to show up for you. So let me. Tears blurred the headlights of an oncoming car into golden streaks. My throat burned. What if I'm asking too much? You've spent your whole life giving too much, she shot back. It's about time you let someone give to you. No strings attached. Her words landed like a stone thrown into still water, sending ripples through the silence I had carried for years. No strings attached. It was a foreign concept. In my family, love always came with strings, expectations, comparisons, sacrifices. I pressed my palm against the steering wheel, grounding myself. Okay, I whispered. I'll come. Rachel exhaled, the sound almost a laugh, almost a sigh. Good. Text me your location every hour. Drive safe. I'll make up the guest room. And Em? Yeah. You deserve this. You deserve so much more than what they gave you. The call ended, but her voice lingered, filling the cracks the storm had left in me. For the first time since leaving, I wasn't just running away. I was running towards someone who saw me. By the time Denver's skyline appeared through the fog, my Ford felt like it had aged another decade. But Rachel's porch light was glowing when I pulled into her driveway, a beacon against the pale winter dawn. She opened the door before I could even knock, arms pulling me into a hug so fierce it cracked something open in me. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had to hold myself together. Someone else was willing to hold me. Her guest room was small but warm, painted in soft terracotta with a quilt that smelled faintly of lavender. I sank into the bed that first night and slept for 12 hours straight. When I woke, sunlight filtered through gauzy curtains, and for once, I didn't wake to Jake's laughter or my parents' criticism echoing in my head. Just quiet. Just mine. Rachel wasted no time nudging me forward. "I made you an appointment," she announced over breakfast 2 days later, sliding a business card across the table. "Dr. Stevens, licensed therapist." "I don't need therapy," I muttered automatically, though the hollowness in my chest said otherwise. Rachel raised an eyebrow. You've carried 34 years of weight on your back. Don't you think it's time to set some of it down?" That first session was brutal. Dr. Stevens sat across from me in a cozy office lined with books and the faint scent of lemon polish. She didn't rush me. She didn't tell me to be fine. She just asked, "What word would you use to describe your family's love?" I stared at the carpet until the word tumbled out, barely audible. Conditional. The silence that followed was heavier than any storm. But it was also the beginning of release. In the weeks that followed, I started to build a life out of fragments. I found a small apartment near Capitol Hill, hardwood floors bare except for a futon and a single lamp. The emptiness felt intentional, like space waiting for me to grow into it. Rachel dragged me to a pottery class on Saturdays. At first I protested, but the moment my hands sank into cool clay, something inside me softened. The clay resisted, then yielded, as if reminding me I didn't have to force everything into shape at once. My first bowl was crooked, lopsided, almost laughable. But it was mine. Entirely mine. At work, I transferred into a new firm that specialized in bridges. Designing structures that could bear weight, span distance, and connect people across impossible gaps, it felt poetic, almost healing. Nights were still hard. Sometimes the ghosts of my parents' words returned, whispering that I was selfish, ungrateful, too independent. But therapy gave me a language I'd never had before: boundaries, worth, choice. And little by little, I began to believe them. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just surviving. I was building. At first, the silence from my family felt like oxygen. No phone buzzing at dawn, no guilt-laced messages interrupting my sleep. Just quiet. Just peace. But it didn't last. The voicemails began like whispers. "Emily, honey, we're worried. Call us back." Mom's voice, syrupy sweet, designed to make me feel like the selfish child she always painted me to be. Then came Dad. "Enough of this childish behavior. You've made your point. Come home before you embarrass us any further." I deleted them, one by one. But each message left a bruise. Within weeks, the tone sharpened. Mom claimed her blood pressure was dangerously high because of the stress I was causing. Dad threatened to report my Ford as stolen, even though my name was on the title. Jake left a string of texts: "You're overreacting. You'll regret this. Family's all you've got." Each word was a hook, designed to drag me back into the role they'd written for me. And when that didn't work, they turned outward. I started hearing from people I hadn't spoken to in years: college friends, old coworkers. LinkedIn messages, Facebook DMs, concern laced with confusion. "I heard you had a breakdown. Your mom said you're not doing well." Jake posted something about praying for a loved one struggling with mental health. My stomach churned as I scrolled through Jake's Instagram feed. A photo of him, head bowed, hands clasped dramatically, captioned, "Family heartbreak. Keep us in your prayers." The comments overflowed with sympathy. Not for me, but for him. For them. It was a masterclass in manipulation. Dad controlled the money, Mom controlled the narrative, Jake played the martyr. The perfect triangle. I sat in my tiny Denver apartment, phone buzzing with other people's pity, and felt rage coil tight in my chest. Rage and fear. What if they convinced the world I was broken? What if their version of me was the one people believed? I played their voicemails on repeat in therapy, Dr. Stevens watching my hands clench tighter each time. "Whose feelings are these?" she asked gently. "Not mine," I admitted, my voice cracking. "Theirs. Always theirs." For the first time, I didn't feel the need to explain myself. Their accusations weren't truths, they were weapons. And I was done being their target. That night, I blocked their numbers. All of them. Mom, Dad, Jake. The screen went still, the buzzing stopped. The silence returned, but heavier this time, like a shield I had built with my own hands. Still, I knew this was only a skirmish. Families like mine didn't surrender. They regrouped. They plotted. And sooner or later, they would strike again. And when they did, I would have to decide, fight, or finally burn the bridge down. Houston shimmered in late summer heat, the Magnolia Hotel lit gold against the twilight sky. My cousin Sarah's wedding should have been a celebration, a glittering escape from old wounds. But when I stepped through the carved oak doors into the private lounge, I felt the trap snap shut. They were waiting. Dad paced by the fireplace, bourbon glass sweating in his hand. Mom sat stiffly in a velvet chair, tissues already balled in her fists. Jake leaned against the window, his tie undone, his smirk polished into something meant to look concerned. "Emily, thank God," Mom said, rising as if she'd been rehearsing her lines. "We need to talk as a family." The empty chair across from them was positioned perfectly, an interrogation seat under the chandelier's spotlight. A performance, scripted and staged. I didn't sit. "You've made this harder than it needs to be," Dad said, gesturing sharply. "It's time you came home. This stunt has gone on long enough." I steadied my voice. "This isn't a stunt. It's survival." Jake scoffed. "Survival? You've always had everything you needed. Mom and Dad bent over backwards for you." The laugh tore out of me before I could stop it, sharp, bitter. Bent over backwards. "Jake, I got a $3.75 jar while you got a Tesla. That's not bending over backwards. That's turning your back." Silence cracked the room like thunder. I set my leather-bound photo album on the coffee table and opened it. Side by side, Jake's birthday carnival with ponies, my grocery store cake with plastic forks. Jake's private soccer coach, my solo valedictorian speech to empty seats. Mom's face blanched. "That's not fair, Emily. Things were different back then." "No," I cut in, flipping to another page. "Things were exactly the same. Year after year. You chose him. Always him." Dad slammed his glass down, liquid sloshing. "We did our best." I reached into my bag and pulled out the glass jar. The coins clinked as I set it beside the album. This is what 34 years of best looks like. Spare change. Pennies. That's all I was worth to you. For the first time, Jake's smirk faltered. He picked up the jar, shaking it gently. The coins rattled like bones. His voice dropped, quieter than I'd ever heard it. "I never realized." I looked him dead in the eye. "That's the point. You were never supposed to." The chandelier hummed above us, the weight of decades pressing in. My heart pounded, but for once, I wasn't trembling. I'm not here to beg, I said. If you want reconciliation, it's on my terms, family therapy, and respect for my boundaries. Otherwise, I reached for the jar, sliding it back into my bag. This is the last family meeting we'll ever have. The silence was deafening. Mom's staged tears dried on her cheeks. Dad's jaw worked like gears grinding to a halt. Jake stared at the floor. For the first time, I wasn't the invisible daughter. I was the one setting the terms. The ballroom lights glittered beyond the closed lounge doors, muffled laughter and the clink of champagne glasses bleeding through. Life carried on outside, but inside that room, the Parker family was unraveling. Dad slumped into the velvet chair he had once commanded like a throne. His bourbon glass sat forgotten, amber liquid dripping down the side. Mom dabbed at her eyes with the tissue she always seemed to have on hand, but for the first time, her tears looked real, less like weapons, more like surrender. Jake lingered near the window, his reflection fractured in the glass. The smirk was gone. In its place, a boy who finally saw the cracks in his golden pedestal. I stood tall, breath steady, hands no longer trembling. It felt strange, this quiet power humming through my veins. For years, I had begged for scraps of recognition, but now I didn't need their approval. I had my truth, and I had spoken it out loud. The silence stretched, taut and heavy, until Mom broke it. We never meant to hurt you, she whispered. Her voice trembled, and for once, I believed her. But intent doesn't erase impact. I know, I said softly, surprising even myself. But meaning well doesn't undo what was done. Dad rubbed his temples, his voice low and cracked. I lost my job 3 months ago. The house is on the market. We're not what we used to be. The admission landed like a dull thud, a confession from a man who had built his pride on control. And Jake finally spoke, his tone stripped of arrogance. The Tesla's gone. Repossessed. His shoulders sagged as if the words themselves carried weight. I don't know how to do this on my own. I looked at him, my brother who had been handed everything and taught nothing. Compassion stirred, but it was different now, not the reflexive urge to rescue, but the quiet ache of seeing him for what he was, unprepared, scared, human. That's hard, I said gently. But it's yours to figure out. His eyes widened, surprised at the boundary in my voice. For once, I wasn't offering to carry his load. I was simply acknowledging it. The chandelier flickered, casting shifting shadows across their faces. For years, those shadows had swallowed me whole. Tonight, I stood outside them. I gathered my album and the jar, tucking them into my bag. My heart felt lighter, as if I had finally set down a burden I didn't even know I was carrying. At the door, I paused, listening to the wedding music swell on the other side. The melody was bright, hopeful, a sharp contrast to the collapse I had just witnessed. I didn't feel pity. I didn't feel guilt. For the first time in 34 years, I felt free. And as I stepped into the hallway, champagne glasses sparkling under the chandeliers, I knew the story was no longer theirs to write. It was mine. Denver's December sky glowed with a kind of blue that felt almost unreal, crisp and endless, like a blank canvas. My apartment smelled of rosemary and sage, the turkey roasting in the oven sending warmth curling through every room. Laughter spilled from the kitchen, where Rachel and a few co-workers from the firm were arguing over who made the better pecan pie. It was Christmas again, but this time, the house wasn't filled with tension or comparisons. It was filled with choice. My choice. I glanced at the bookshelf where the glass jar now sat, no longer filled with loose change but with crisp $5 bills, one added every week since the day I left. Not as punishment, not as resentment, but as a marker of growth. A reminder that my worth would never again be measured in spare coins. Hey, you okay? Rachel's voice pulled me back. She leaned in the doorway, flower on her cheek, her smile soft but steady. "Yeah," I said, my throat tight. "Better than okay." The doorbell rang, and Elliot stepped in, my colleague from the bridge design project, carrying a bottle of wine in one hand and his easy grin in the other. His fingers brushed mine as he set the bottle on the counter, the touch electric yet calm. Not lightning strike passion, but something steadier, like current flowing through a bridge's steel beams, strong, dependable. We ate dinner crowded around my thrifted table, the mismatched chairs squeaking under the weight of stories and laughter. Rachel raised her glass, curls catching the light. "To Emily," she said, eyes shining. "Who builds bridges stronger than anyone, both the ones in this city and the ones inside herself." My cheeks warmed as glasses clinked. For the first time in my life, praise didn't feel like pressure. It felt like love. Later, as snow began to fall softly outside, Elliot followed me to the balcony. The city lights reflected on the glassy surface of the jar inside, casting golden ripples across the floor. He wrapped a blanket around my shoulders, standing close but not crowding me. "Deep thoughts?" he asked, his breath visible in the cold air. I smiled, watching flakes settle on the railing. "Just grateful. For once, Christmas doesn't feel like a performance. It feels like home." His hand brushed mine again, tentative but sure. And this time, I didn't pull away. Inside, Rachel turned up the music. The laughter grew louder. My apartment, my life, buzzed with warmth I never thought I'd know. And standing there, wrapped in snow and new beginnings, I realized, family wasn't about blood. It was about who chose to stay, who celebrated your victories without dimming them, who loved you without strings attached. For the first time, I wasn't invisible. I was seen. Fully, and finally, seen. Snow still clung to the Denver streets when the last of the guests left that night. My apartment was quiet again, but it wasn't the silence I had grown up with, the heavy kind that pressed me into invisibility. This silence was full, alive, humming with the echoes of laughter that lingered in the walls. I stood by the bookshelf, fingertips brushing the glass jar. Inside, the neat stack of $5 bills gleamed under the lamplight. Each one was more than money. Each one was proof. Proof that I had chosen myself, week after week, mile after mile since the night I walked out at 3:15 a.m. My phone buzzed. A text from Jake, "Merry Christmas, M. I'm trying. Hope you're happy." I stared at it for a long moment before slipping the phone face down on the table. For once, I didn't feel the need to respond immediately. His journey was his. Mine was here. I stepped out onto the balcony, Denver's skyline glittering beneath the falling snow. Behind me, the jar glowed like a lantern. Ahead of me, the city stretched wide and open. And that's when it hit me, the lesson I wish someone had told me years ago, the lesson I need you to hear now. Your worth is not measured in gifts, grades, or how much weight you carry for others. It's not in the car you drive, the applause you earn, or the sacrifices no one sees. Your worth is in what you refuse to accept. In the boundaries you draw. In the family you choose. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is walk away from the people who made you small, and walk toward the life that makes you whole. So if you've ever felt invisible, like I did, I want you to remember this: you are not spare change in someone else's jar. You are the treasure. And the moment you claim that truth for yourself, you'll never be invisible again.